Welcome to Tower Talk Business Radio, where we bring you conversations with the top business minds on Long Island and around the nation every week. Featuring expert consultants and small business owners who have found success but are also willing to share their top tips, failures, and give gritty, matter-of-fact advice based on their firsthand experience. Now, let's get down to business on Tower Talk Business Radio on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.
Hello and welcome to Tower Talk Business Radio, powered by the Nassau Community College Foundation. My name is Ray Schwetz, AVP of Business Banking at Jovia Financial Credit Union, along with Donyshia Boston-Hill, CEO, keeper of the brand, marketing and digital agency. And we're focused on being the premier resource for business and entrepreneurship.
We bring you weekly business advice, tips, tools, and services that help you grow your business. Plus, we interview some of the top business leaders in the industry. And I'm super excited, Ray, about our guest today. So please tell us a little bit more.
Yes, helping provide us with business empowerment today is Candace Montgomery, and she's the Senior VP and General Manager at AtlanticLive at The Atlantic. Candace, welcome to the show.
Thanks, guys. I'm happy to be here.
Well, we're excited to have you. So tell us a little bit about your marketing background and how you got started with AtlanticLive.
Sure. Well, we should start that I've only been at the Atlantic for 6 weeks. And so, you know, my marketing and events career spans over 20 years, primarily with media companies. I spent a large chunk of my career at Essence Communications, but also working with digital companies, websites, as well as boutique event agencies. So all of that has brought me to the AtlanticLive most recently, where I am working to, advise as well as build, create our event portfolio, our innovations as it relates to events, and then how we show up in the market from virtual to live programming as it relates to the Atlantic and the AtlanticLive with the showcase and focus on our journalism.
That's fantastic. And because of the, COVID and everything else happening in the world, AtlanticLive, I'm sure it's pivoting. So you've been through a major pivot from, live events to hybrid. So, how's that? How are you building that strategy moving forward?
So, much like most organizations that have a, significant experiential business, the AtlanticLive pivoted. I literally hate this word. We changed most of our business into virtual in 2020, much like most businesses. So I didn't have to take on that hurdle when I got here. Most of that work had been done in 2020. Now in 2021, we are still focused on primarily focused on virtual, and we are, we're keeping an eye on what's going on in the country, the vaccine rollout, understanding, industry trends as it relates to travel. But we want to be in a hybrid capacity later on in the year.
Ray, I like to just share with you that I'm going to love on Candace just a little bit because she deserves it. She's an amazing experiential and brand strategist and very humble, but just a top-notch expert in the industry. And Candace, you do so much for everyone. We want to just share with the world, what's your passion and what do you feel your purpose is?
I think that for me, passion and purpose go hand in hand. And I spend a lot of time mentoring young people. And I think that's a passion project for me. Just, how people are trying to figure out and chart their next steps in the world, what they want to do, helping to guide and, people. And then also my own children and family is obviously a passion and purpose project for me. So, I do love what it is that I do. I wouldn't be doing it if I didn't love it. But I think that for me, it goes a little deeper in terms of like, how am I going to help someone to the next level?
You've worked on some very impressive projects. And as Donyshia said, I think you're being very humble. So tell us about maybe some of the highlights. I mean, you've done a lot in your career, but tell us about some of your highlights, like the Essence Festival or working with Entertainment Weekly. I'd love to hear some stories.
Well, barring giving you all the industry secrets of my very long career, I think, some of the highlights have obviously been some of the legacy program that I've been able to create, programs that are still in existence, like Black Women in Hollywood. Obviously, a lot of the things that we created for the festival, just being able to turn the festival into a virtual program last year was a major feat in and of itself. I would say that is a huge highlight. Taking a 4-day program that touches 500,000 people in a live experience and turning that into 2 weekend, 8 days and 2 weekends was like, I think in about 6 weeks, literally probably the most Herculean task I've ever done from an experiential perspective, aside from actually producing the festival live in and of itself. And then I would say also just, when I first got to Essence, we did something called Women Who Are Shaping the World, which has probably been replicated 5,000 times, but it was one of the original women's conferences, focusing on, Black women that are in business or doing great things across industry and giving them a stage to have conversations about what it was to be a Black woman and doing what they were doing in their industries and talking to other like-minded people and being that voice to them. And so I think that was probably a highlight. We don't do that. I mean, Essence doesn't do that event anymore, but I think it was one of the precursors for a lot of the conferences for Black women that you see in the marketplace.
And that's a good trend that we want to see continue, certainly.
Sorry, Ray. You know what? I have to say is a Black woman in Hollywood, which is also something that I actually created, is the premier event for Black women in Hollywood that we, Essence would do annually, tied to the Oscar week. And, we would honor, Black women in front of and behind the camera. And, giving them their flowers where they would otherwise oftentimes be overlooked in a more mainstream industry, these women overlooked with Oscar nods. So we created our own program to celebrate them, and actually has become one of the most sought after attended events of Oscar week.
And Candace, just some background. So Ray is a super movie buff. Like you said Oscar, you said Hollywood, like his face just lit up because where he is broadcasting now is like his horror movie, I want to call it man cave. So he's all about that. You actually just made his day.
Yeah, I'm pretty proud of that program, I have to say. So glad you're excited. My kids would say connection. Glad we had a connection, Ray.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. And are there any, and I know you can't give away industry secrets, but certainly I'm sure you have some great stories of working with people. Gosh. Great stories that come to mind that you could share with us today.
Well, I could give you, without naming names, and this goes way back. I once did this event for, we opened up a spa. This is over 20 years ago. And we flew in editors from literally all over the world, from all the top magazines. And there was this one, there was like all of these weird requests that they had. This one woman in particular, this one editor in particular, had to have like a bottle of Jack on the table, whichever event, events planned for 4 days, everywhere she went, there had to be a bottle of Jack at her seat. So there was like that weird request. And then we one time had a pretty big A-list actor, we had to custom style her wig for her. And, it was like the first time it had to be paid in cash and had to be handed off at the concierge, like all of these like weird idiosyncratic things that happen. I have been cursed out, screamed at. I have gotten like the whole rigmarole as it relates to celebrity Hollywood stories that people would probably not want you to know, but I've got all of that juice tucked under the rug.
That's right. We can't wait for your book in the future. So
I always say that I could write the Devil Wears Prada version of events, and it would be a bestseller.
I can't wait to read it. We can't wait to read it. But in the meantime, you are, at Atlantic Live, and also I'm sure you are still partaking in some, festival style or South by Southwest style conferences. What is your takeaway from some of the industry and how the industry is moving forward?
So, for one, we do have our own festival, the Atlantic Festival, and we are working on, a flagship style program, and a new flagship style program. But I think a lot of people are trying to figure out, from an industry's perspective, how to cut through the clutter, how to integrate new formats, new digital integrations, as we figure out when we're going back to hybrid or when we're going back to live, because it's all still a huge variable. So a lot of people industry-wide are trying to figure out how they can engage their audience, how they can be more interactive. And, because everyone is creating content, everyone is receiving content from basically every platform. And how can we differentiate ourselves to hold on to our audience set and keep them with us for the period of time that we're trying to disperse this information.
You are listening to Tower Talk Business Radio on the voice of National Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm Ray Schwetz, along with Donyshia Boston-Hill, and our guest today is Candace Montgomery, Senior VP and General Manager, AtlanticLive at the Atlantic. Now, what are some of the misconceptions about the work that you do?
I would say generally people think that events is like something anyone can do. They don't necessarily, think it requires strategy or, that they can pretty much do them in a vacuum. And I think, particularly if you work for a corporation or a larger organization, if you're coming in there and thinking that you don't have to cross collaborate or, think about it from a strategic perspective or align with company goals and the larger brand strategy, all of that is required for you to be able to do your job effectively. And I think that, people often think, particularly when I was at Essence, like, oh my God, your job is so glamorous and you get to work with celebrities all the time. And I'm just like, you have no idea. Like the rest of my job is 5,000% more harder than you think. So I would definitely think that's a huge misconception, or that, that you don't really have to think about KPIs and things like that. These are all things, just like any other marketing vertical, you have to overlay that into the work that you're doing.
Absolutely. And I'm sure you've been called a planner. Someone's always saying like, you're in production, so that means you plan, which absolutely drives, me crazy. It's so different than a wedding planner. It's not. It's so sure. Next level.
Yeah, for sure. And I have been asked to do a lot, that's the other thing, that you can do all these other things on the side. I'm like inundated with requests, and I'm just like, I'm going to refer you to somebody else because I can't do that and this too. Like my job is pretty big. But I think people do think you can plan anything. And I do think you're underestimating someone's expertise.
Absolutely.
I think try planning an event and then you'll find out, it's much more difficult than it sounds. And that's at a small level. I can only imagine at your level, when you're incorporating brand strategy and all that and how that must work. That's.
There's a fair amount of detail in terms of like just thinking at a macro level about all of the elements that need to be factored in for a successful program, from promotional strategy to, again, like aligning with company goals. If there's an overlay of a ticket strategy, or all of these things have to be lined up and paced out properly for it to be successful.
And without getting to shop, I mean, obviously there's a lot that goes into this, and but what are some of the things that you focus on when you're putting on a live event? What are some of the things that these are must-haves, and then these would be nice,
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, we've got to start with a clear goal and objective for the program. And no matter how big or small, like even if it is a wedding, like, all the way up to a giant festival, what are our goals and objectives? And then making sure that everything that we're doing answers that, right? And then a timeline is important no matter the size or type of event. And, the age, this is without question, I would say budget. Like starting and working on something without clearly understanding and knowing the budget, because all of that, everything that it is that you're going to need to do backs into that, and how you're going to break it out to support all the areas of what's required to execute that event.
Absolutely. And Candace, I would say to everyone listening and watching is a subject matter expertise on, crunching the numbers and bringing, events to life. So how what's your focus on, tackling that strategy and tackling, the must-haves in the budget? Like, what's your must-haves that if you couldn't live without it, or you had to, this is something that my basis for even launching an event for those people that are listening?
Well, I think it's important, depends on the type of event that you're doing.
Right.
But for me, the type of work that I'm doing, making sure that we have, a production area in the line item in the budget, promotions line item in the budget, whether it's, paid promotions or, strategic partnerships and all these kinds of things, creative and resource management. So a lot of organizations have been trimmed down due to COVID, event organizations have been trimmed down due to COVID. And so sometimes we have to outsource to be able to support the teams that we have so that we can have a successful program. And so making sure resource management is there, as well as talent. Talent drives audience, plain and simple. And it's not necessarily celebrity, but the talent for your audience that your audience is interested in, making sure that you have what you need to be able to secure that to drive a successful program and eyeballs and engagement, brand awareness, all that stuff.
So that's great. So Candace, right now, you're with AtlanticLive. Can you tell the audience a little bit more about, where they can find your content, where they, in the future, where they can access the content that you'll be producing, whether it's live or hybrid?
Sure.
Or virtual.
You can go to the Atlantic.com for all of our event programs. And then we also have, AtlanticLive does have an IG handle and we do have a LinkedIn. But, for our larger programs, we do sync through the Atlantic proper. We actually have an event tomorrow, which is focused on, lost Black history. It's called the Inheritance Project, and it'll be on tomorrow, 1 p.m. So you can go online to Atlantic.com and register. It's free.
Now, you mentioned that you like mentoring people. There are a lot of women who are considering your profession. My daughter is one of them. What advice would you give to someone that's considering entering into your profession? Sure.
I think that, for one, you really need to understand if you're the type of person for this kind of work, because when you're starting out, there's a lot of, again, I think there's a lot of grunt work that you probably don't expect that you have to do from an entry level perspective, like stuffing gift bags and, carrying boxes or up till whatever time at night. And, I think there's a fair amount of grunt work that you need to be willing to do. But then also, I think from a skill set perspective, people that have, really good with details, people who are really great under pressure and can think themselves out of a situation, people who are, basically problem solvers. And then also, I think that, people that have great follow-up. You have to, a lot of times, even people have to follow behind people all the time to get the answers that they need. And so I think being able to follow up. And then lastly, I would say, and this isn't necessarily for events, but just in general, for anyone starting out, maintaining and building relationships is so important. And you never know when you're going to need to dig into a relationship, or, someone that you helped is able to help you later. So I would say building and maintaining relationships throughout your career is huge.
Excellent across the board.
Absolutely. You are listening to Tower Talk Business Radio. Our guest today is Candace Montgomery, Senior Vice President and General Manager of AtlanticLive at The Atlantic. My name is Donyshia Boston-Hill, along with Ray Schwetz on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.
Now, with all this work and with responsibilities and family, what do you do for your downtime to recharge?
Literally, I walk away from the screens. I was just talking to Donyshia about that. We're inundated with screen time. We're on Zooms all day long, or the phone is going off or the Slack is going off or the G chat, it's coming at you from every direction. So for me, it's time to unplug, I literally try to just, also just change my clothes. It's almost like it's a shift in the brain. I'm done with work. I'm switching to something more relaxing, and I go sit on the couch away from the screens and try to actually talk live to the people in my house about their days and just, just have regular conversations. And then also just working out, trying to fit in if there's anything that the pandemic has taught me is about, the importance of spending some time on myself. And so I really try to carve out, out of a 7-day week, minimum 5 days that I spend working out just for 30 minutes to move my body.
Yeah, I think we're all in a place where we need to lose this COVID weight, and it's just not, it's physical weight, spiritual weight, and just and moving forward, so that we can, all achieve and acquire success for whatever that means, for you as an individual. And that leads us to our question: how do you, equate success, and what's important to you, Candace, as an experiential and marketing professional, and I would say a C-suite level, executive?
I mean, I think it differs by the person. And for me, do I feel comfortable and happy, where I am? Do I, I'm not overwrought with work in my life where just it's, when I wake up in the morning, or I'm waking up in the middle of the night, that kind of thing. For me, success is, am I able to chart my course towards the things that make me happy and fulfilled in my life? And, my work fits into my overall life plan, not that it's driving, it's a part of my life, not driving my life.
Now, with things opening up, Candace, do you feel like things will change going forward? I mean, I do feel like obviously what we're going through, it's a game changer in how we handle everything. How do you feel that that's going to affect what you do? And how do you feel like things are going to work in the future for you and your profession?
For sure. The experiential events industry, much like a lot of industries, was hit extremely hard. And so from venues to, people that work in production to, these agencies where this is the core of their business, they have had a really rough year. And so, as I mentioned at the top of the show, as we look to having more vaccine penetration, people feeling more comfortable with travel, where they can travel to programs, to events, getting on trains and planes. These things will help to bolster, industries back into place. I do believe, we will see, but I think, we still have some time before we have everyone back to being fully engaged in live programming. Even with, venues at 15 and 20% capacity, they're still nowhere near making, covering their costs. So we still have some time, but I am hopeful. 2022, I am very excited about. I think 2021 is, we will have upside from 2020. Did I say that right? 2021, we will have upside from 2020. And, I think it's going to be a transitional year, I would say. In 2022, I'm really looking forward to, it looking more like, I still think there are things that we learned in 2020, but I think that it'll look more like what we're hoping for. And maybe the bottom half of 2021 too. Hopefully
we can achieve that. Yes. Hopefully we can achieve that. And I think, everyone pushing together in their respective industries, and, we'll get there. It seems like we're moving in the right direction.
It's not just the industry. Everyone in the country, in the world, has to work towards, as individuals, if we do what we're supposed to do, it will trickle out into, the business sector, where the business sector can get back to, their regular streams of income. But it all starts with us as individuals.
Absolutely. And Ray, he's in banking. So he is overloaded when it comes to, PPP loan applications. I'm so happy that he's smiling today. It's a lot to get this machine we call Earth back rotating and moving in the proper way. So
we're all doing our part. So as we come to a close, Candace, what's next for you? What's next for Atlantic Live at the Atlantic? And where can we find you? Give us your contact info.
Sure. And let's start with my information. I can be reached on LinkedIn pretty easily. Candace Montgomery, you can message me. I can be reached there. And what's next for the Atlantic Live? We have a full slate of programming for 2021. And we are out there in market to our brand partners with that slate of programming. So, and I think the other piece is that we do, like I said, we have 2 big flagpoles this year. Our regularly scheduled the Atlantic Festival will be in September. And then we have a newly launched project around happiness that will happen in May. So I'm super excited about that and hoping that the listeners will join me in that journey and look out for what's next.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you so much for being with us today, Candace.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Candace. I'll leave you with DB's philosophy, and I'm going to add a little twist today based on Candace's words. A brand is your voice, and the happiness strategy is your key to success. Thank you, Candace.
You guys take care.
I want to thank you for being with us. My name is Ray Schwetz, along with Donyshia Boston-Hill and Michael Chung, your co-host and producers. This is an NCC Foundation Business Leaders Council production. Visit ncc.edu/WHPC for more information. We're available on iHeartRadio as a podcast on iTunes, Android Podcasts, and Spreaker. This has been Tower Talk Business Radio, powered by the National Community College Foundation on the voice of National Community College, 90.3 WHPC.